It's time now for Countywide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Join News Director Paul David and News Editor Philip Catafamo as they talk with our community's leaders, newsmakers, and people in the know. You'll hear about the hot topics in Yavapai County that affect all our lives. And now here's today's Countywide.
Welcome back to Countywide. I'm your host, Philip Catafamo. I'd like to thank you for joining me. On today's show, we are talking with Cottonwood Oak Creek School Superintendent Steve King. Mr. King, welcome back onto the show.
Oh, thanks for having me, Phil.
Well, we're always happy to have you. The budget override continuation was just voted upon. I believe last week we had the final results of the November 2nd election. I just wanted to kind of briefly, can we just touch upon what the budget override continuation was, just kind of what people were voting on. We'll get into the specifics of who it benefits and what the vote actually was, but just kind of briefly here, what was that continuation?
So under Arizona state law, school districts are allowed to ask their voters in their community to override their budget or to spend above what their budget is by either 5%, 10%, 15%, whatever that might be. So for the past however many years, I don't remember how many years this has been in place, Cottonwood has gone out to the community and asked about every 4 years for a 10% budget override, which is about $1.3 million. Our school budget is about $13 million total. And so that $1.3 million goes into a lot of different programs, and we can talk about that in a little bit, right. But that's what it comes down to. And our voters did pass that. I'm very, very thankful that they did. We did get those results Tuesday night, so it was good news.
Well, let's talk a little bit about those results just briefly before we get into how the override benefits the school. So 6,919 total votes in this budget override continuation, 3,307, so that's 47.80% said no, 3,612, that's 52.20% said yes. And obviously close margin, very, very close margin of victory, not as close as the Mingus Union budget override question, but similar in terms of the final results. So the continuation was passed, which is great, and we'll get into why it was great here in just a couple seconds. But are there any concerns with this close margin that in the next 4 years, when you guys present this question again, that it may flip the other way and people may go no? Is there any concern there?
Well, there's always a concern, and I think that really comes down to how well we tell our story. And when I look at those numbers, the first thing I want to say is I'm very, very grateful to not just the people who voted for the override, but also for all people who voted. But as I'm looking at the turnout, it's a little to be desired. About 37%, I think, is what the voter turnout was. And I wouldn't say I was disappointed, but what I would like to see is myself telling our story of what's happening in our school district better. And getting people out there and seeing what's happening in our schools, because I'll tell you, our people, our staff, our kids, our families, it's pretty remarkable what I'm seeing on the campuses daily. And I think if anybody goes out there, takes a tour, talks to some kids, sees what is happening in our classrooms, but also after school, it's pretty remarkable what's happening.
Well, we'll get into some of those programs and some of the great curricular updates that have happened at Cottonwood Oak Creek that you and I talked about a little off air. And some great stuff going on. But getting back to the continuation, who, now that it's passed, we're done with the voting, who is that going to be benefiting, and where is that money going to be going?
Sure. So by statute, that's a maintenance and operation override. And maintenance and operation is going back into the classroom. And what we use those for intervention programs. So one of the things we've seen with the pandemic and everything else, there's been a lot of some movement of children. So looking at where those needs are with those kids and providing those programs that help them get them back to where they need to be as far as their academics go. So that's what our intervention plans cover. The other piece is our art and music programs, those enrichment activities. Those are covered by that. Those also fund many of our sports programs and after school activities. So the vast majority of those funds go back into the classroom. Actually, all those do, directly to benefit children. So, yeah.
Well, that's great. And I remember having Mike Westcott in, the Mingus Union High School superintendent, coming in before the vote and the day of the vote, just to kind of talk about all this stuff in the school year so far. You mentioned the pandemic briefly. I want to ask this question straight out of the way. I mean, last year obviously was a nightmare with opening, closing, mask, no mask. You know, it's all been up in the air. I do want to ask, you know, how did you guys navigate the challenges of last year's school year?
Yep.
Did the district learn anything? Anything stay over from the pandemic? Is there anything that you guys did during the 2020 school year that has moved now into this school year? And just, how did last year go in general?
So I don't think it can be denied by anyone that the last 20 months have been extremely difficult. And not just for our schools, for everyone in this community. I mean, this has really thrown many, many people for a loop out there. And we've had to adapt quickly. So back in March 16th of 2020, that date will stick in my mind for a very long time, we received word from the governor to shut down the schools. And they said, it'll be a couple weeks. Well, a couple weeks turned into the rest of the semester and into the summer. So our staff, teachers, everybody, bus drivers, our food service people, they kicked into gear and they started doing the things they needed to do to keep things moving to the best of our ability. Now, having said that, one of the things, you asked me what we learned, I think probably the biggest thing that everyone has learned, not just in Cottonwood, but around the state and around the country, is that online learning is a poor substitute for in-person. Children, especially young children, need to be in classes with their peers, with their teachers, and learning. That is what we have discovered more than anything else, and that's been a good thing. Because for a long time people said, oh, just go online, you get this stuff. Nothing takes the place of those interactions. So that's probably the biggest lesson that we learned, and because we learned that lesson, we have been committed to staying open, and we've been fully open since early September of 2020. And so I still get sometimes phone calls saying, just open the schools, just open the schools. And well, I want to let the viewers know we have been open, and I invite you to come by and take a tour and see what's happening. There were some intermittent shutdowns, so a couple weeks after Christmas as we saw the pandemic, and we've learned a lot about the virus as well and how to keep our schools open. And open our schools and keep our schools open.
Right.
And our staff has been recognized by the governor's office, by the state superintendent of public instruction, and by the county health as being a model on how to do that. And I'm very proud of the people who've done that. It's not me, it's our nursing staff, it's our teachers, it's our bus drivers, it's our custodians, it's our food service people. They've really stepped up because they understand, probably more than anyone, that it is absolutely vital that we keep our schools open and our children in school where they need to learn. So I think that's probably the biggest thing that we've learned over time. What we've also done, and we've always had excellent technology in our district, and that dates back a decade or more, long before I came here. And we really stepped that up as well, as far as understanding that the digital can support what is happening within the classrooms at home or otherwise. So one of the things it's kind of an exciting development that's been happening in our 5th and 6th grades, and this is all taken through grant funding, E-rate funding and so on, is every 5th and 6th grader will be now having their own laptop going home to support at home the lessons that are happening in the school.
That's fantastic.
So that's just one little thing that's happening, but we've learned many, many lessons, but the biggest one is the importance of in-person instruction for children.
Nothing really replaces that that feeling of going to school and being at school. I mean, right. I have friends who work remote, and they have that same kind of longing for human interaction, especially my friends who live by themselves and they work remote. So yeah, it's interesting. We all think that just go to school online. It's not a big deal. Just do it online. Yeah. I took online classes in college. I absolutely hated them. I cannot imagine trying to do it at the middle school level. I was a terrible student in middle school, and it would have been even worse had I been able to do school online. But some people, it works for them. I talked with Mr. Westcott when we talked about it at the high school level. There are some students who can benefit from that particular model of learning, and so there are benefits to it. But I can definitely see, especially at a younger level, just sort of missing out on that day-to-day interaction with peers. But we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk more about this current school year with our guest today, Cottonwood Oak Creek School Superintendent Steve King. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Who doesn't dream of home improvements? Perhaps your kitchen, the real living room. Maybe the bathroom, where you bookend your day. Langstrand Contracting is your one-stop shop from tear down to finishing touches. With 35 years of experience, Chris and his team will work with you to match your family's style and budget. Call Langstrand Contracting today for guidance in bringing your vision to life.
Your carpet is the largest air filter in your home, trapping dust, dirt, and germs from the air that your family members breathe, even the furriest ones.
That's why it's important to keep your carpet and tile clean and hygienic with regular cleanings by Zero Res. Zero Res uses state-of-the-art technology and ZR water, not soap or harsh chemicals, so zero residue is left on your home surfaces.
Schedule your appointment today because a clean home is a healthy home. Visit ZeroResNorthernArizona.com.
The mouth is the gateway to the digestive system. Studies indicate a correlation between oral health and full body health. Regular cleanings and checkups can help protect you. New patients are welcome at Arizona Smile Designers in Cottonwood. There's a full smile worth of services all offered under one roof. Whitening and cosmetic to implants and smile reconstruction. Find out more or request an appointment online at azsmiledesigners.com.
Terrifying jobs, high-flying linemen, take 3.
Josh, this is an absolutely terrifying job. Why do you do it?
It's a very demanding job, but very rewarding and exciting.
How much energy are you actually working with up there?
500,000 volts of electricity.
It's definitely not my line of work. Does anything shock you?
Yeah, distracted drivers terrify me.
I want to welcome you back to Countywide. I'm your host, Philip Catafamo. On today's show, we are talking with Cottonwood Oak Creek School Superintendent Steve King. In the first segment, we talked about the budget override continuation, which was passed on November 2nd by voters here in the district. And now we're just kind of diving into the current school year. We talked a little bit about the difficulties of the 2020 school year, but it is a new time. And I just want to ask, how's enrollment?
Yeah.
Has it increased? Just how's the school going? How is the school year going so far?
So yeah, so far so good. Of course, there's been hiccups and little speed bumps and things like that. Enrollment is good, so we've stayed steady, which is excellent news. We have seen some kids moving in and out, of course, different types of things happening. But overall, it's pretty good. We did open back in August. We do not have a mask mandate, so I always try to stress that. Students and children do have choice, and of course that has been very controversial. Not just around the community, but around the state and around the country. Our school board has been very supportive of the direction. They've been instrumental in laying out exactly our next steps moving forward. But keeping our schools open, I can't lie, it's been a challenge for a lot of people. There's been a lot of fears out there. There's been a lot of concerns about different aspects, but I think the one thing that everyone can agree on is the importance of keeping open for in-person instruction. Now, you say that, right? It's just open the schools, and of course it's easier said than done. But to go back again to our staff, they have done an absolutely remarkable job because they truly understand that the best place for children for school is in school, in our playgrounds, in our cafeterias, in our classrooms, and so on. And some of those challenges is you do see some not outbreaks, but people coming by and saying, hey, we've got COVID in our family. And I think the biggest challenge that we had at the beginning was just emphasizing and stressing and educating our families and students that if you do have an illness in the family, or if someone has been diagnosed with COVID and positive test or something else, please keep your kids home, because what that happens, if you send your child to school and there's an exposure, then that spreads a little bit as far as the quarantines that we are required to do by the county health department. It's not like we have a choice in this. We have to follow these procedures. And we don't have strict procedures, but I think we have smart procedures in place. And Nurse Bob Clark, he's our district nurse, has just been a superstar over the last 20 months in not only navigating through these times with me personally, but also helping the rest of our district understand that if this, then that, and keeping those to a minimum. And we've done okay. Our quarantines have been kept to a minimum. The students have continued to be supported through an imperfect, certainly online, but at least it's something. But the goal is always to get the students back in the classroom as quickly as possible. But we really need our community's help if there is something going on at home in the family, just keep your kids home. Don't be the one responsible for closing our schools. And so far we haven't had to. So out of all of our classrooms across the district, we've only had to quarantine 2 classrooms over the last 6 months or so, since I guess 4 months since we began. But we have had quite a few quarantines scattered throughout.
Right.
And we've dealt with those. I think the big challenge is also substitute teachers, right? And how do you continue staffing? It isn't so much that we've seen the virus run rampant through our schools, but we have issues with staffing. And that has always been the concern. Every morning I get an update from our sub-coordinator on our absences and where we're at. And I check those every single morning. Okay, we're short here, filling these gaps. And our principals, I can't speak highly enough of our principals and administrative staff for them stepping up and filling those classrooms when we need to, because substitutes are in short supply. We've also had some parents step up, and I'm very, very appreciative of helping them step up, and I encourage them all to do that as well. And we'll even pay them, not a lot, but we can do to help out and fill in those gaps as needed. And we've also had some retired teachers step up, which has been great, and they've been running some programs after school to working with small groups of kids who are identified that, hey, they need some extra help. And so those retired teachers, I'm very, very grateful, Kathleen Jensen and Jenna Adams in particular, who've come back to really stand in that gap as we've needed them. So yeah, a lot of things happening.
Well, it's great to know that you've got so much support, outside. That's really kind of stepping up and helping out. I mean, like you said, keeping kids in school is the important thing. However, you do still have to navigate what's currently going on, which is unfortunate because it is still going on. But yes, it's nice to hear that there's a lot of support not only within the district but outside as well. Just making sure that these kids can stay as normal as possible. We discussed a little bit some stuff off air that you guys were looking at. We have a couple minutes. I'd love for you to kind of break down that Iceland model that you and I were talking about. Sure. Just it's a great learning model that I'm curious because it'll lead into what we're going to talk about next.
Okay. So about 5 or 6 years ago, we read an article about what was happening in Iceland. And 25 years ago, Iceland had the highest teen substance abuse rate in Europe. And you wonder why, right? I mean, but if you think about it a little bit, what else is there to do in Iceland when you're a teenager except, go out and party and do everything else?
Apparently so.
Well, the first thing that Iceland did, and I'm not sure who it was in Iceland, medical professional or somebody, they recognized they had an issue, right? We got to do something about it. And I think that's the first step to anything. What do we got in front of us and what are we going to do about it? So what? This is happening. What are we going to do? So the first thing they did is they brought in doing some research into the brain science of why people use substances, right? And they realized that substances fulfill a need. And it's either you're normally high, you want to be brought down, or normally low and want to be brought to that middle level. You're always trying to find that place where you're comfortable at. But the other thing they found that not only you can do that through drugs sometimes, and that's short term, and of course it's damaging. But the other thing they found is that activities, sports and art and music and other things can do the same thing to the brain chemistry as drugs. So that was interesting to them. So they took that information, and then they also realized that families should be responsible for their children. A novel concept. I believe in that. I think children are there, and families have the responsibility for raising them. They are the primary people that are responsible for raising those children. So they worked very closely with law enforcement in Iceland to hold families accountable for the actions of their teens and their youth. And curfews and fines, but really holding that line and setting that standard that this is what we're going to tolerate. And the third thing they did, and this is the meat and potatoes of it right there, is since they discovered that you can get those same types of feelings or that mood through activities, they went and asked the kids what they wanted. So instead of saying, oh, we're going to have this, they said, okay, what do you guys want? And so the kids told them. So Iceland started implementing these after-school programs in expanding their sports, but also art, music, drama, dance, all these different things that these kids had asked for. And the combination of working with law enforcement, after-school activities, and the brain science, 20 years later, Iceland had the lowest teen substance abuse rate in Europe. A remarkable transformation. And we've been looking at and actually working towards implementing that model. And we've got the brain science down. We've done a lot of work, and we've been working with a lot of scientists in that area. But we've also been working very closely with law enforcement. I want to give a compliment to Chief Gazelle, as well as YCSO Sheriff Mr. David Rhodes. They have been extremely supportive of our schools. Yeah. And I can't express how grateful I am to them for their support. We now have a school resource officer through YCSO. We just got done with a bus safety collaboration with Cottonwood PD, and Cottonwood PD has always been there for us. But the third thing that we've done and that has been absolutely instrumental and I think transformative, is increased our after-school offerings for our kids, extracurriculars, not just in traditional sports. And when we shifted to the K-8s about 3 or 4 years ago, it also gave us the opportunity to expand our sports programs. So we've expanded our sports programs across all of our campuses and down into younger grades. So we have more kids playing sports now than ever before in the history of our district. But not only that, we've been very active in writing grants. And because of these grants, they've allowed us to put these additional programs into after school. And I guess we can talk about that.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in just a little bit. We do have to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk. We'll wrap up here talking about these middle school programs, and we'll talk a little bit more about what Mr. King was talking about before I had to interrupt him. But we'll be right back on Countywide. Don't go anywhere.
Who doesn't dream of home improvements? Perhaps your kitchen, the real living room. Maybe the bathroom, where you bookend your day. Langstrand Contracting is your one-stop shop from tear down to finishing touches. With 35 years of experience, Chris and his team will work with you to match your family's style and budget. Call Langstrand Contracting today for guidance in bringing your vision to life.
Award-winning Soundbites Grill is an entertainment restaurant located in Uptown Sedona at the Hyatt Pinion Point Resort. Open for lunch and dinner, featuring fresh fish, all-natural hand-cut beef, even a full vegan menu. Family-friendly, open 11:30 to 9, late dining on Friday and Saturday. Soundbites Grill has some of the best views of the Sedona Red Rocks. Offers world-class entertainment, food, fun, and music.
The mouth is the gateway to the digestive system. Studies indicate a correlation between oral health and full body health. Regular cleanings and checkups can help protect you. New patients are welcome at Arizona Smile Designers in Cottonwood. There's a full smile worth of services all offered under one roof. Whitening and cosmetic to implants and smile reconstruction. Find out more or request an appointment online at azsmiledesigners.com.
Terrifying job. Snake handler, take one.
James, this is a really terrifying job.
Given the hazards, why do you do it?
I've been fascinated by reptiles since I was a child.
Tell me about your little friend there.
So this is Bear Hug. He's a Burmese python. We have him here at the Phoenix Zoo.
It kind of makes my skin crawl. Is there anything that rattles you?
Yeah, distracted drivers terrify me.
Want to welcome you back here to Countywide. I'm your host, Philip Catafamo. On today's show, we are talking with Cottonwood Oak Creek School Superintendent Steve King. We talked about the budget override continuation that was just passed. We were talking about some of the new learning model that the district is kind of looking at and potentially looking to implement. A lot of opportunity with these in-class programs, out of after-school programs. So I just want to throw it to you, Steve, because I know there's a lot more to cover with that. But how are these middle school programs going? A lot more people participating, you said, and I'm just going to give it to you.
Yeah. So we've dropped it outside the middle school too. So we're down. We've got kindergartners participating in these after-school activities. So the goal is to keep kids, when they go home, I want their brains tired and I want their bodies tired. And then they'll only come back the next day for even more. And so that's the goal. But when you have kids engaged in after-school activities that we've seen, and it's not just traditional sports, although we've expanded those sports programs, but we've got, I walked the campus on a Tuesday afternoon just to see what happened, just dropped in. I saw kids' skateboard clubs. I saw permaculture clubs, little kindergartners digging in dirt and agriculture and everything else. Mountain bike clubs, just one dance clubs, these little, they had the little tiny, they call them the tiny dance club, and then the older kid dance club. Keeping kids engaged in positive activities is the goal, and helping them find themselves, right? Finding their place in school. This is me, this is who I am, and exploring those options. And I really think that's what school is all about. So that supports a lot of what we've been doing. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention our mountain biking programs. And there's an organization called Wheels for Fun that I know you've had on this program here. It talked about it. They have invigorated our after-school programs to a degree I can't even imagine. And that comes down to the volunteers that we have. So we have more kids now participating in after-school activities than we've ever had in the history of our district. But we also have more volunteers working in our schools with our kids, bringing their gifts. And the vast majority of these individuals are retirees. And I can't tell you how grateful and appreciative and just I have extreme thankfulness, especially in this season. It's appropriate to have that thankfulness out there for what they have done for the children in the community. And it's very profound what they've done. We have mountain bike clubs in all of our schools. You see the kids all geared up. They're learning skills. They're learning positive activities. They're getting active, and they're getting off these things right here. Mm-hmm. And that's the purpose, getting kids back involved and off their devices. Because I'll tell you, there's very little, and this is editorializing, I know, but there's very little good that can come from these devices in the hands of children. We need to help our children be healthy and active and find their passion and find their vision. And I really believe that that's what schools are all about.
If you want more information about the district itself, visit their website, cocsd.us. That is the district website. Their phone number, 928-634-2288. Steve King, thank you very much for coming on the show. I wish we had more time to talk about, there are other programs that we didn't get a chance to cover, but it just means we'll have to have you in again here real soon. But thank you very much, Steve, for coming in. That's going to do it for this episode of Countywide. I'm your host, Philip Catafamo, wishing you a great rest of your week. We'll see you next time.